where we at? Yeah, where she's talked about this incredible person. And so Manny's a product of an immigrant mother and a native of Santa Barbara who graduated both from Santa Barbara City College and the University of California, Santa Barbara. In the earlier part of his collegiate career, he fell in love not only with personal growth, but also with the advancement of other people in his community. He began a nonprofit organization named Homies Turf to Surf, a surf camp set up to offer at-risk youth, that's always been hard for me, a new perspective on life. He created his program in hopes that in viewing the world anew, the young participants of Homies would be able to make a better life choices. Having graduated from a local university, he yearned to learn more about the world and himself through a philosophical contemplation. His drive led him to pursue and maintain a Master of Philosophy at San Francisco State University. The experience at SFSU is something he holds dear to his heart. The philosophy department at SFSU, I have retainers on, my braces just came up, I can't talk very well, okay. With multiple perspectives from which to analyze the world. In his past, he has served as an adjunct faculty member at Antioch University, Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara City College, and is now pursuing his doctorate in philosophy and global leadership program at Pepperdine University. And I am very honored to welcome you, Manny.
Hello, everyone. I'm gonna sit down while I do this. What I want to talk to you about today is cultural capital. And so if
Manny, if you sit down,
Oh, I'm right here.
Go sit on the edge.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
I want to talk to you about cultural capital, and realistically, that bio that was just read out, that is what I've done on paper, but that's not the reality of what's gone on in here and in here. Yeah, I was able to reach those successes, but it's been a lot harder than that lets on. And it is that journey that has allowed me to help others, that has allowed me to help myself. And that's why I want to talk to you, because you're doing that. There's so many people that talk about the world or how things that we could do or how we could make changes, and you're actually doing that. You're making those changes. So one, I want to commend you for that. Now, before I get on to talk about what cultural capital is, I want, pull out your phone real quick. Someone Google cultural capital for me. Someone Google pedagogy for me, and someone Google andragogy for me. So we're looking up cultural capital. Who's looking that up? Boom, back there. Someone pedagogy. And then someone andragogy. Andragogy right here. So the first definition that pops out with cultural capital, what does it say? Still loading. So with cultural capital, we're recognizing the histories that we all bring individually into a given classroom. Does anyone have pedagogy up? What's pedagogy?
The method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or theoretical concept.
Okay, and does someone have andragogy for me?
The method and practice of teaching adult learners adult education.
And I want to make this distinction clear. With pedagogy, you have this traditional way of teaching that looks at a canon and has the professor or the teacher up front with, I have something to offer you. I am here to give you some type of knowledge. You sit there and receive. With andragogy, it goes both ways. It takes as credit that the person that you're talking to has something to give back, so that learning works both ways. That's what we're looking at with cultural capital. The recognition that the person sitting on the other side has a history and something to share with as well. So as mentors, working with your mentees, it can be easy to come in and be like, I have life experience, this is what I have to offer you. But it's also important to recognize what their life experience is and what they can offer in return, because that's how relationships are formed. That's how relationships are built, and that's how true learning actually happens. And so with my story, I wouldn't be here today if people hadn't taken time out of their lives to be like, yo, Manny, you're smarter than that, read this book. Yo, Manny, what's going on with your life? Let's talk about this, let's talk about that. So I wanted to share a little bit of my cultural capital with you today so that we can go on to talk about what it is that you're doing as mentors and mentees. There's 3 periods in my life where I've felt at ease and comfortable. First was as a kid. I grew up in abject poverty in Mexico for the first 7 years of my life, but I didn't know I was growing up in abject poverty. I was just a kid playing in the dirt, right? Like, I felt completely comfortable. It wasn't until I came to the United States and I felt poor and I recognized that I was different than other kids that I finally started like getting in my head. But when I was a kid in Mexico, I wasn't in my head at all. I was just being a kid having fun. One point in my life where it was just like, I didn't really worry about anything. Other point in my life was when I was in jail, when I was in juvenile hall, boys camp, county jail. Why? Because there's no expectations. That is what people expected of me. They expected me to be locked up, so it was easy. I don't have to do anything. My whole day and agenda's planned out for me. All I have to do is fight. If I ever felt disrespected, boom, that's it. Easy. Third period is finally now in my 40s, where I finally like become comfortable with who I am, how I feel, what I want out of life, what I want to do for my occupation, how I want to help others, right? But it's taking a long time for me to get there. There's been so many moments in my life where I didn't feel adequate, I didn't feel right, I didn't feel like I belonged. When I first moved to the United States and we moved here, we lived at my family's house and it wasn't my own house. And I didn't speak the language and we were poor, so I didn't have a lot of clothes. So when I first went to school here in the United States, I didn't fit in. And I felt it. I got held back a grade because I didn't speak the language. Once I ended up catching up by around 5th grade, I was able to advance and I took a GATE placement test and I actually got into GATE. But then when I was finally in GATE, I went to that class and there was nothing but white kids and I was the only Mexican kid there. And so I didn't feel like I belonged there too. So I started acting dumb and playing dumb and boom, now I was able to finally kick it with my homies. In junior high, it became easy because now it was just like we were gangbanging. We were doing the gang thing and it was just like, that comes easy. People talk back, we're like, that's what they expected out of me, so fuck it, like I didn't care. High school, I barely went, but I know that when I would go to high school, again, you're targeted by people that are looking at you, like trying to get you in detention, trying to get you to go see the police, trying to get you to do this. So why even go? I just kick it on the streets. And that whole time, there'd be people talking to me and telling me like, yo, Manny, things could be this way. Yo, Manny, things could be that way. And I'm very fortunate in the fact that I had a support system at home with my mother and that I had people telling me that life could be a different way, because I know for some of my friends, they were being told the opposite. You're never going to go anywhere. Like you're sentenced to prison. Like you're never going to go anywhere. It first dawned on me that I had things a little bit differently when we went to one of my friend's house and his mom was smoking crack. And he's like, fuck, mom, again? And that shocked me because I didn't expect that. And so when I got home like at 3 a.m. that day, I remember, and my mom was asleep and I hugged her and gave her a kiss while she was asleep, just because I know I didn't have to deal with that. Like I was able to go home and be with someone that like loved me and cared for me and wasn't gonna do those types of things. But these are the houses that people are growing up in. That's the house that I'm going. These are the situations that we're going through. So when you're talking to these kids, you have to understand the history from which they come. It's easy to come in and be like, yo, I wanna help you. These are the things that are out there in the world. But unless you share your cultural capital with them, it's hard for them to share theirs with yours. Like I'm sharing some of my vulnerable moments in my life with you and kind of opening myself up with you. But you have those too. You know, I'm sure there's been moments in your life where you're just like, this is fucking hard. I don't know if I could keep going. Be it work, be it relationships, be it friendships, be it introspection. Like I'm sure you've had those moments where it got dark and somehow you came out of that. That's what you give back. That's where you have your cultural capital, in your lived experience, understanding that, recognizing their lived experience, and finding something where you can share that. Now, again, this bio will tell you that I went to City College, that I went to San Francisco State, that I went to UCSB, that I'm now getting my PhD at Pepperdine. When I went to City College, I failed my first 3 semesters because I was getting locked up every single time. I got out and I was about to do a 3-year prison bid, and I took a philosophy course, and that philosophy course changed my life. It changed the way I looked at the world. But that didn't happen overnight. Am I this gang kid? Am I this school kid? Who am I? That whole mental battle took so long. When I went to UCSB, at that time, I was the only bald-headed, big clothes wearing kid around there. So again, I felt like a complete outsider. So I'd go back to City College and do my work there, go to UCSB and go to class. When I went to San Francisco State, I almost quit. I walked into my professor's office and told her that I was done. I had a full-time job. I was going to school, and there's a lot of reading in a master's program. And I didn't go to high school because I was locked up. And so at these seminars, all these kids would talk about like things that they learned in high school and apply it to the reading. But because I didn't go to high school, I'd have to go home, research what it is that they did, what they spoke about, research the material that we actually learned. And so it was too much for me. And so I went to my professor and I told her, I was like, yo, Shelly, I think I'm gonna quit. I was like, I can't do this. This is too much. And I told her what I just told you, and she laughed. She's like, Manny, you don't get it. I was like, what? She's like, there's no one in that classroom that understands the material better than you. She's like, they bring up this other stuff because they can't explain this. She's like, but you can. She was like, I was actually about to ask you to be a student professor for me. And I was like, what? Like, no, I'm a gang kid. Like, no. She's like, no, I want you to teach for me next semester. She's like, I bet you most of your life you've been told that your opinion doesn't matter or that you don't understand things right. She's like, that's not the case. She's like, you fit in here. This is what you do. And I found my voice. And again, it's been high roads, it's been low roads, but I'm finally at a spot where like I feel comfortable in my skin. I feel comfortable what I'm doing. I feel comfortable I've recognized that my life is one of service. If I have to open myself up and become vulnerable to help other people somehow, some way, that's what I'm here to do. And so when I ask you, what I'm here to do to ask you is to think about your life. Think about what's brought you to this moment and what you have to offer whoever it is that you're working with. Think about their life. Think about what's brought them to the moment where they're now with you. And get to understand each other, get to know each other. It is building those relationships that's going to help you be the best you, going to help them be the best them, and forge something that's going to actually be fruitful. And so, moving forward, in trying to help, what do? We try to be our best authentic self. Think about who it is that you are at your core, what it is that drives you, what it is that makes you, the experience that brought you to who you are today, and let that lead. Maybe there's communication issues with some of these kids and you guys don't understand each other, right? See how easy it was for you to pull out your phone and find Google? That's how these kids communicate. Google, YouTube, Instagram. Find a way of explaining your world perspective, your world histories through social media, through YouTube, through anything. That's their means of communication, right? It takes work on your behalf, just like it takes work on their behalf to forge these relationships. That's all it is. And you're here. You've done the work already. You're here. Continue doing it because like the rewards are gonna be amazing. When you see these kids that some people thought would never be anywhere and they're doing something amazing, you're gonna be super stoked that you were sitting here today. Thank you.
So, like I said, we're gonna hold this table, but Manny, thank you. Thank you. And being our authentic self, I think is more important. I haven't had the same experience, but I've had a lot of experience culturally, you know, in Santa Barbara and other places. So please feel free to ask Manny any questions that you like, and I'm sure that he'll answer it.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free. I'll work my way back. Yes, sir.
So there's one part you mentioned that your high school education was a bit spotty, there. And so, but then how did you make that transition? Because, I think of the kids I've mentored who are so far back, and the idea of college work is they're just so far behind that it's not so easy. But clearly you must have had similar issues if you were out of high school a lot. So how did you make up that educational deficit to be able to?
Funny thing, my drug and alcohol counselor through probation, I think it was CALM back then, my drug and alcohol counselor through probation is the one that told me you should go to college. And I was like, for what? And she found her, she's like, there's girls and parties. She's like, go. And so she took me to EOPS to see Sylvia Cortez. I'll remember to this day. She took me to that office and I sat down. She's like, he needs to be here. He needs to go to college, such and such. And Sylvia's like, I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from him. She's like, why do you want to go to college? I was like, I don't know. Like, I just want to stay out of jail, like for a little bit, She's like, well, let's figure out how to keep you out of jail. She's like, in order to get you here to school, you have to have a high school diploma or a GED. She's like, how many credits do you have? I had like 3. I was like, she's like, let's get you to take your GED. And I was like, okay. So a couple weeks later, they hit me up. They're like, hey, you have to take night classes, do this. And again, I'm thugging at this time. And I was like, I'm not doing night classes. And they're like, why don't you just try to take the test? And I took the test and I passed. And so that's how I was able to get into college. And so again, it's just like from GED to PhD. It's a path. It's not a path everybody takes, but it's possible,
May I ask one follow-up on that?
Go ahead.
Which is that you may have passed the GED, but I think I'm just sort of relating the kids I've had who technically maybe graduating high school, but they're grade levels behind in terms of like reading and writing, and so
Everybody is.
And so you must have had similar experiences, but clearly you were able, and you're so far behind the 8 ball if that's the case. But and clearly you must have had some of that, but you were able to work past that. How did you do that?
When I started teaching at City College, it amazed me that all of the students that I was getting weren't college ready. I thought, because I didn't go to high school, I thought these kids would come in knowing how to write a paper, knowing how to read, knowing how to comprehend, especially teaching philosophy. Like you're reading 17th century philosophers and it's difficult. So I thought I'll have to help them a little bit and we'll go from there. Very few of them were ready, all across the board. So I saw it on myself to teach them how to read, to teach them how to write and get them college ready within my courses. They're not, the educational system right now doesn't necessarily work. And I recognize that. And you could look at schools here within Santa Barbara and look at Montecito Union and see that schools here within Santa Barbara rank 2 out of 10th in the national index, while Montecito Union ranks 9 out of 10, right? We need to do something to change that. I'm currently working on something to change that, but across the board, like kids aren't college ready. So what do they need? They need people like you guys to support them and help them find the way, find access, right? There's programs out there that'll help them with tutoring, with everything across the board. For me, I like to read, and that's what helped me out. I read a lot in juvenile hall. I read a lot when I was in boys camp, and I'd have books handed to me that I probably couldn't comprehend because of the language, so I went to a dictionary. Boom, that's how my vocabulary elevated. I remember being in boys camp and one of the staff gave me a farewell to arms. He's like, try this book. And I was like, what do I want to read this for? He's like, just try it. And like, again, it taught me a little bit more about life. It kind of opened my scope. So it's little things like that help me get by. Yes, sir.
Well, I like learning new terms, so I appreciated I'm not going to pronounce them right, but the two.
Pedagogy and andragogy.
I don't think we ever got the cultural capital on the Google, but I could look it up, but that's the official title.
So again, cultural capital is the recognition that we all carry a history and something within us to give back, right? So I talked about andragogy, how it's a two-way street with learning. So cultural capital is recognizing that everybody here brings some type of capital with them, right? Something of value. Your life story is your cultural capital, based off of where you grew up, based off of your understanding. What it is that makes you today, that is your cultural capital.
Thank you. Follow-up question. Sorry, Mike. You went through a lot of, but you also just explained, a lot of bad times, but you pulled through and you accomplished some amazing things in what you just told us. Was there one person, or what's the common theme? Was one person that you went back to? Was it a combination of people over that time period?
It's my mom.
How did it happen?
It's my mom. She, through everything, She never gave up on me. She always like, she had my back no matter what. I hit a moment where I hit rock bottom, and I'm not a quitter. That's the one thing that I just like, I'm not a quitter. But I hit a moment where I got really, really low, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And I'd been drinking that night, and I was just like, don't do this while you've been drinking. If you really want to do this, do it when you're sober. When I woke up the next morning, I knew I wasn't a quitter and I wasn't going to quit, but more so I knew I couldn't do that to my mom because of everything she's done. Like I said, I grew up in abject poverty in Mexico with my mom, so I've seen us be the poorest of the poor. I saw her come to the United States and build everything that we have from nothing, you know? Like that woman's got drive, she's my rock. And through everything, when everybody gave up on me, they were just like, he's going to prison, like your son's no good. She never, ever gave up on me. She never stopped loving me. And that's it for me.